Hi, and welcome to another Lockdown Live. This time I've got another guest for you, and hopefully you'll get something out of this as well. So I want to welcome Jay, who's a friend, family friend, fellow Arsenal fan. He's the lot, basically. He's about four in one. But most importantly, he's a GP currently working for the NHS. And obviously during the coronavirus crisis, it's been quite a job. So Jay, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, Akil. Thanks for having me on.
That's no problem, no problem. I mean, firstly, I mean, how are you finding the sort of lockdown and stuff? Obviously, you're still working and you're probably busier than ever. But I mean, how are you finding it when you're home and weekends and sort of the outside of work stuff?
It's weird now. We're now 6 or 7 weeks in. It's become a new norm, and you just get used to the changes you've had. So work is definitely got busier. People are needed to be seen and need treatment. And at home, it's made my life simpler, to be honest. I've got two young children, and my wife's been doing a great job looking after them. And yeah, it's been different, but I've got into a good routine, and it's going well, thank you.
So professionally, I mean, I hate to ask, but what's the last 2 months been like? I mean, it's just we're going through an absolute unique situation that probably none of us will ever have to see again. I mean, how's it been like for you?
I have to say, I'm really proud of my colleagues. The NHS has stood up. In general practice, we've made changes which would normally take years in a matter of weeks. For example, video consultations. We've been asked to do video consultations for years, and there's always been resistance. But within a couple of weeks, we're all doing video consultations. Patients have responded really well to them, which has been great. And to be fair, patients have been understanding as well in respect to the workload we have.
Yeah.
My colleagues have been working really hard. We're just trying to do our best for the community and do our bit and to help our colleagues in care, in hospitals and in social care. So overall, really proud.
And I mean, those sort of video conferencing like you talk about, I mean, even for you, it's a new way of working. I mean, how's that been? And actually, have you noticed that this is actually a lot more efficient, and maybe we might keep doing this where you can, obviously?
I think there are definite positives. I mean, to be fair, we had a model of telephone triaging a lot of our patients, and this is just an add-on because you got the video aspect as well, and it's been really nice. I think patients really appreciate not having to come in. It makes it easy. It's more efficient for them. It's a bit more efficient for us. You can't do everything through videos, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course.
But we're finding that vast majority of patients we can do by video. For example, before I'd be seeing about 40 patients face to face. It's now gone down per day, and now it's gone down to 2 or 3 per day. So a big difference. It's a bit more risky on our end, and we have to be really careful with what we diagnose and how we advise patients. But in fact, it's been really well received from our side and also the patient side so far.
Yeah. And obviously we've had all these messages around stay at home, save lives, help the NHS, I mean, how important is respecting that and staying home? And obviously when things could change in a few days with plans and stuff, but generally, as we look at it right now, how important is it?
Okay, it's very simple for me. If everyone stayed at home, the virus cannot spread. And it's simple as that. And I think on the whole, people have been staying at home, but you can see more and more, and it's quite natural. There's more travel, there's more people on the roads and people walking, and that's how the virus spreads. So if we can hold out for a little while longer, I really think the COVID-19 can be stopped. At this point, there might be second waves, but we can try and reduce pressure on NHS. And especially the vulnerable patients, looking after them. That's what's really helped the lockdown.
And I mean, how's that been then? Because you've got patients, obviously, that are vulnerable, that you are probably begging you for appointments face to face because they're probably they need to be reassured and stuff like that. Some of them might not be good with technology. How are you sort of dealing with that? And that must be quite tough.
Yes, it is. It can sometimes make you feel quite impotent as a doctor because a lot of things that you could normally do, you just can't do. So for some patients, so we're still seeing the vulnerable patients. We're doing home visits. We don't have patients in a waiting room, so it's a safe place for them to come. So we're not saying they can't come and see us, but it's very difficult in some cases, especially the elderly patients, when it's stuff that you would normally send to the hospital for treatment. The risk is that if they went in, they might contract COVID, and they might not come out. So it's making those assessments, having those difficult conversations about whether we try and treat it at home, which might not be the best case for them, or sending them into a hospital, which they might contract the virus. It's been some really difficult decisions, especially when it comes to end of life care as well.
Must be horrible. I mean, you mentioned it in the sort of the intro bit, that you've got 2 young children. You're having to make kind of home visits and stuff. So you're literally putting yourself at risk every day, and along with all the other, NHS heroes that we have. Do you think about that when you wake up in the morning, that, I'm putting myself at risk, got 2 children? Does that make you feel quite nervous?
I think at the start, there was times when I said to my wife, look, if I were to go to hospital, you won't be able to come and visit me. This might be the last time you see me, which sounds really drastic. But those are
and you had those sort of conversations with your wife?
I did. I mean, she's a GP as well. She completely understands. She's currently on maternity leave. Yeah. But in reality, we at the start, we didn't have much gear at all. We had very few masks and very little PPE. But now luckily we're fully stocked with PPE. We're fine in terms of seeing patients. But you're right. There's always a risk that we're putting ourselves in front of the virus. But it's something that you have to deal with. This is our job, and if I can't do it, who's going to do it? I'm relatively on the lower end of the risk scale. Some of my colleagues have been staying at home because they've got medical problems. So I feel horrible being at home, not being able to do my job, and I'm just doing all I'm doing is my bit to help the community.
And you're doing very well too. What's pressure in your role? I mean, I presume you're under pressure now, just with everything going on. But generally, what's pressure? Do you feel you're under pressure pretty much every day of your life, really? I mean, the reason why I asked that is I remember I took my grandma, so she's unfortunately passed away now, but I took her to get to our local hospital to see a doctor. She had some issues with her eyes, so she was going for injections. And when we went in there, the doctor just mentioned he was only in the hospital 1 day a week. He did Wednesdays there, for example. And he was saying that he sees about 40 patients in the 1 day. And we were just gobsmacked, 40 patients in 1 day. And then, there's that whole, laugh about our doctors are always kind of delayed and stuff like that. But I kind of saw why, and that was a real moment for me, because actually his name was Dr. Pierce, and I remember I've only met him once, but for 10 minutes, but I remember his name because the time he gave us and gave my grandma, he just, you wouldn't have known he's got 39 other patients to see. It was a real good service, but that obviously does mean he might be a little bit behind because some people will take longer than others. It's understandable, but. So maybe actually there's pressure every day. But if I was to ask you, what's pressure in your job? What is pressure?
It's difficult, isn't it? If you take a normal day, forget about COVID, and you've got 40 patients in a day, each patient is segmented to 10 minutes. Some patients may take a few minutes. Some patients may take 2 or 3 times that amount of time. And what you've got to do
some may take 10 minutes to get into the room. Because if they're
exactly.
slow walker, exactly. So you've got to bear that in mind.
But that's part of the job, and you've got to segment each patient, and you've got to imagine that interaction with the doctor is maybe the most important interaction they have that week. So there's 1 or 2 patients of mine who come and see me just for a chat because they haven't, and it's only time they have a meaningful conversation. They come and see me, and that makes you feel quite warm. So you want to make that 10 or however long the conversation is, golden for them. It's really important. So you might, on one end, you might be telling a patient a poor diagnosis one end, and then you might be you're telling someone they're pregnant the next time. But it has to be segmented. You can't let one consultation go to the next consultation. So a pressure for me is when you're overrun, when you have had a tough day, when you've had bad news after bad news, and it kind of does. It's natural for it to come into you. So you've got to give yourself a few minutes after when you're feeling under stress. Just take a step back. Just get out of the room, go for a walk, make a coffee, and then come back in. The other thing I found during this time is that, as I said before, is not being able to do my job properly. When you know that, if it was a couple of months ago, I'd be able to help that patient. And
Yeah.
and at the moment, I'm not able to help, and that makes you feel really sad, and you feel you powerless as a doctor, and unable to use your skills for some patients. And as I said, at the start, especially when there was very little services in the hospital, everything was going towards coronavirus. There were some cases where unfortunately, it was life or death, and I basically had to give them a choice. And it's really sad because those are people's grandparents, and that's how you have to deal with those situations. And you have to be honest with them and say, "This is all I can do."
It must be a really hard conversation to have.
I think for me, they were really hard conversations. It's very rare I come back and tell my wife about patients. I try and leave work at work and come home.
Of course.
Whereas other people, my wife will give the whole day's workload to me, just pass it on to me. I kind of try and keep work at work. But there's a few times I had to come back and say, I felt distraught.
Yeah. I mean,
but you see, general practice is a positive. Generally a positive workplace to be in. It's just been a difficult few months for the whole country.
Yeah, of course. When you were young, did you always know you wanted to be a GP, or did you always know you wanted to work in the medical field, or?
Not at all. And I think the only time I went to a boys' school, I enjoyed school. To be honest, it was only when work experience kicked in when I actually started thinking about careers. Okay. Before then, I had no idea what to do. I kind of liked all subjects. Probably science as with most Indian boys were my forte. But in reality, I had to have a really hard think when I was 16 about what I wanted to do. And it really came down to me knowing myself. I knew that I needed something that challenged me. I needed something that would allow me to speak to people, because the way I learn is by interacting with people. I'm more of a listener. I like learning from other people. So I wanted a job that would allow me to do that. And something that would allow me to keep growing and not just stop at a certain point. Because I would be doing a job for the next 40, 50 years. So you wanted something that would keep me interested and not just have a job which I just pay the bills. I wanted to do something that, if I'm going to spend half my life doing it, to try and enjoy it. And medicine was kind of, let's try it. And the great thing about medicine, Nakhil, is that there's a job for everyone. Different personalities, from your dermatologist to your radiologist to your microbiologist to your general practitioner to an orthopedic surgeon. So during university life, there's a whole range of personalities, and that's the beauty about medicine. You kind of find your own route.
Yeah. And what would you say is your biggest high to date? And by that, I don't mean anything. It can be the smallest thing, but it can be a personal high for you. Something that really you came back and you were proud. And obviously don't go into too many details if obviously you can't, but just generally.
I think generally it's the proudest moment is when, especially when I first joined the practice, they said, "Oh, your mum must be really proud of you." Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So when you've done a good job, when you try to do your best for a patient and gone that extra mile, and just to help them out, because those small things that I can do can make major differences to patients. So I think those are the highs. I think personally, becoming a partner as well was a massive boon for me as well. But really, for me, it's the patients. It's that the relationships I have with patients are the most important thing. There's probably about 20 or 30 patients who I've got to know really well. Patients I see regularly, and that's why I go to work for. To be honest,
that's nice. And what about lows? I mean, maybe it is those conversations you've had recently, but is there any what's your lows, or what's the hardest thing you have to do in your role?
For me personally, the hardest part was after you finish medicine, you do 2 years called Foundation Year 1 and Foundation Year 2.
Yeah.
And then you join a specialty, well, most people do. I fell out of love with medicine in my second year because it just became, in medicine, you're there together for 6 years, you have lots of friends around you, and then all of a sudden you're in the workplace. And there's no real in between. You all of a sudden you're a doctor. I say, whoa, And after 2 years of doing it, I felt really drained, and I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what specialty I wanted to do, and I really need to take a step back. I was stuck in the hospital in the middle of Kent, so it was away from everyone else, and I'm someone who needs people around me. And it was for me, the low was actually thinking about actually leaving medicine. So taking a year out and finding a new route was really important for me. So that's what I did. I took a year out and did a master's in sports medicine, which with the plan to become a sports doctor.
Okay.
And most sports doctors have to be a consultant or a certain stage. So general practice was one route to get into sports medicine training. And then so I into general practice training, and I loved it. It was just for me, and I hadn't realised it. It was from progression from wanting to be an orthopedic surgeon to doing sports medicine to doing general practice. And that's what it is. I had to be true to myself. I really enjoy general practice, and it allows me to cover sports medicine as well. So low for me was really falling out of love with what I really wanted to do. I was spending, so many years doing something and really not knowing my place. And actually taking the time out to go back into it was really useful for me.
Okay. And what motivates you? What gets you out of bed every day? And maybe is there some days where you don't want to get out of bed? I don't know. But what generally motivates you?
Listen, the day I don't feel like getting out of bed is the day I just do something else. We've only got a short time. And if it gets to a point where you're going to have bad days, but if you feel like it's just getting too much for you, it's time to do something else. What motivates me is being able to make a change and making changes. So for me, you don't make changes for change's sake. There has to be a reason. And being a partner and owning a business and being able to make changes has been really useful. So I'm always thinking of ideas of how I can make the practice better for patients. And so it's from the smallest thing, from reception changes and having a water cooler in the reception to big changes in terms of changing the way we work in terms of video consultation or telephone. So in reality, that's what motivates me, is trying to make a positive change for my patients.
Okay. And you mentioned before about when you've got your X amount of patients in a row per day, and if you've had 5 or 6 sort of negative news, how do you get yourself back up for it? Because obviously, as you said, it can get you quite down. But how do you do you take a few minutes out and think, it's fine if the next patient, if it's a bit delayed because it's better for them if I'm in a better headspace? Do you just power through? Do you think about your kids? Do you think about something else? How do you kind of, get through that? So if I give you the scenario, you've just had 5 patients, all been negative, unfortunately. You've got your 6th. What do you do? And how do you get over it?
No, you're right. So I think the worst thing is getting stressed about being late. So all my patients will know that if I'm running late, when I get to them, I'm not going to be rushing them. So I have to be in mode that I'm not going to be rushing the next patient. For me, I've got a few triggers in my room. I have pictures up of my children. I go for a coffee, or I take a step out and just try to go and speak to someone. There's something about something else. So I go and speak to the reception about something they're watching on TV, or talk about football with someone, and then I come back in. That 2 minutes is so important just to reset. So that's what I do.
And if you had to give one tip to someone who was either thinking about going, I'm going to ask you 2 questions actually. One is someone young going through education and they want to go into medicine. What is the one tip you would give them? And the second question is someone who's already in medicine, who's potentially found the last 2 months absolutely stressful. What would be your tip to them to keep going, if that makes sense?
I think someone young.
First one.
Yeah. Someone young who's, whatever you want to do, don't let anyone say that you can't do it. Surround yourself with people who are going to support you. So whoever it is, I was very lucky. I didn't come from the best background. I grew up in Surrey in London, and luckily enough, I was able to go to school in Surrey. But what I was able to do, I had good foundation. And whether it be your parents or a group of friends who will be happy when you succeed. You don't want to be around people who be jealous of success. And for me, it was all about trying to keep challenging myself. It took a few years for me to get used to people who come from private schools and trying to keep up with them. And at my university as well, from a grammar school kid, it was always trying to get myself to the next level. And that's what you have to do. Try and keep pushing yourself. And whatever you want to do, ask advice. Don't sit there thinking there's no one there to support you. Keep knocking on doors. It's really important. And that's what you have to do. It's your life. You have to take control. No one's going to give you anything. Take control of your life. And if you want something, find out how to do it. Get advice and go for it. Just keep going for it, and work hard in the first few years until you get to university. that's when your brain's a sponge. Try and acquire as much information as you can, and get yourself your own foundation, so then you can bounce forward and go wherever you want.
Yeah,
For
really
doctors who are feeling a bit disenfranchised, unhappy with NHS, which happens, it's, you know, morale is sometimes can be really low in NHS. I think give yourself some time. Just reevaluate why you first joined the profession. Because it can be easy to forget. Especially, I can imagine, especially now in hospital, and speaking to colleagues in hospital, it is really tough. But remember how important you are and the skills you have. And if you need to take a break like I did for however long, take a sabbatical and just reevaluate. And if it's not for you, do something else. Do not be scared. Do not have fear.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And yeah, I think you're right. I'm sure there's people out there right now who are just really, you know, under pressure and under it, maybe who are doubting themselves or doubting their careers. But I think, as you say, I think what's important is that they're doing such a great job, and we see it on Thursday evenings at 8:00. We see all the nice messages that the NHS are getting, which I think is spot on. Absolutely, you know, I have people in the NHS as well close to me, so it's such a great job. So I think, Jay, you know, keep doing the job you're doing, keep that positive attitude, keep helping people, because actually without people like you, I don't think the country would be able to go, and I think we're seeing that at the moment. So Jay, I think final message, I guess, would be, why is it again important to stay home? I just want to stress that point.
Again, I stress that the virus cannot spread if you're at home. So please do your best to stay at home. I know if you have to go, you have to go out, but if it's not needed, stay at home. Let's try and beat the virus together. You're helping the whole country by staying at home. And I know it's difficult, and it'll get harder as it goes on. But everyone's doing a great job. Let's keep it up a few weeks, and let's get over this first wave. The aim is to try and get to a point where we can try and get a vaccination. So the longer we withhold this virus, the more chance we get the clever guys who are doing the vaccine, get them ready, and let's beat this virus.
Great, thank you, Jay, and take care. Hope your kids and wife are well, and stay safe. Yourself as well. Look after yourself, because that's just as important as looking after your patients. Thanks.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.